Hi, class. So today we're going to be discussing impulse control disorders, what they are, the symptoms, the causes, treatments, relevance, and a little bit more in addition to that. In regard to a definition for what an ICD is, we have one provided to us by the National Library of Medicine, which states impulse control disorders, ICDs, are characterized by urges and behaviors that are excessive and or harmful to oneself or others and cause significant impairment in social and occupational functioning, as well as legal and financial difficulties. Such conditions are plagued with the aspect of lack of control exhibited toward these urges, and due to the specific nature in which they are exercised, they are also referred to as addictions, sorry. Specific conditions: children, teens, and adults. We have pyromania, PM, which is an obsession with lighting things on fire. Kleptomania, KM, which is an irresistible urge to steal, oftentimes insignificant or meaningless to the person stealing them. Intermittent explosive disorder, IED, usually unsolicited and characterized by uncontrolled, frequent angry outbursts, of which are usually overzealous in nature. And then we also have conditions related to children. And while they are usually and way more statistically related to children, there is known documentation of grown male adults having been diagnosed with CD, conduct disorder. So keep that in mind while you're reading this information. So we have ODD, which is consistent ongoing pattern within children characterized with anger and extreme defiance toward authoritative figures, as well as conduct disorder, CD, which is innate aggression in children aimed toward people and animals, stated as persistent violation of social rules and the rights of others. And while these are the only five that I mentioned here, there is many other impulse control conditions that fall under the same criteria. These are just the more prominent ones, and of which are discussed a lot more on platforms today than are others. Causes and effects. Causes. So the main consensus is that there is no primary causes for these conditions. They are multifaceted and maintain multifaceted factors, of which are genetics, brain functioning, and there is documentation and scientific study that proves that kids and adults, teens who have ICDs show impairment in brain structure, thinking, and cognitive function. We also have trauma, personality traits, ADHD, comorbid mental health conditions such as personality disorders, substance abuse disorders, and mood disorders. Some of those consist of OCD, anxiety, depression, and many more. The effects consist of difficulty developing and maintaining interpersonal relationships, failure in academic and career ventures, self-injury, criminal involvement and or incarceration, low self-esteem, suicidal thoughts or behaviors. Signs and symptoms: threaten to harm others, lack of empathy, participation in bullying, fighting, sexual assault, which is usually corresponding to conduct disorder as well, not many of the other conditions we just spoke of. Unsolicited aggression, mistreatment of people and animals, truancy, running away from home, lying, cheating, angry outbursts, and sometimes strong feelings of guilt. Specific to pyromania, we have fire setting, cruelty to animals, suicidal thought, depressive moods, and difficulty coping with stress. Specific to kleptomania, we have incapable of resisting the impulse to steal, tension prior to committing theft, and relief post-stealing. Because kleptomania specifically characterizes a lot more different attributes as opposed to the disorders that we are discussing today, I did leave a YouTube link right here under the definition of signs and symptoms titled kleptomania. And it's just a very short overview to give you a good understanding of kind of why kleptomania is more different than these other conditions. It's not as defiant or fueled by anger as a lot of the ones that we're speaking of today. And then we have specific to pathological gambling, which is compulsive gambling behaviors, inability to discontinue gambling despite negative impacts on personal life, and may experience high levels of stress. Treatment. There is no current treatment out there that has been FDA approved, but there's therapy management provided to parents for their children as well as to adults dealing with ICDs. Some of those treatments include PMT, parent management training, which is basically a therapeutic practice where professionals come in and they speak with parents and they help them develop strategies to better respond to children dealing with ICDs in their home in order to promote more positive behaviors. MST, multisystemic therapy, which is a holistic form of therapy that utilizes pretty much everybody in a child's environment. For example, teachers, parents, friends, bus drivers, things like that. And in order to help more productive practices and ways to respond for these children in order to reduce more negative behaviors. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And for those of you that don't know, this is a form of talk therapy intended to help with managing issues in your life by identifying the problems and changing the way you think and respond to them. So now we have instances, and these are posts that I found on Facebook by looking up specific conditions that we're talking about today. In particular, for the first photo, we have pyromania. I just looked up the hashtag pyromania, and it seemed pretty overglorified. I had many videos of flamethrowers, flame swallowers, and then I found one video, which is the one I provided for you today, which is just probably a 16-year-old girl who has some kind of lighter and she just lights a piece of paper on fire, and that's the remaining portion of the video. And then I have another post that I found after looking up kleptomania, which was stated by a wife in Nigeria who says, I have been married to my husband for 5 years. We have a son and everything is moving on well for us. The only thing that makes me cry all the time is that my husband steals. Oops, hold on. He is what is known as a kleptomaniac. We are comfortable people and he gets me all I want, but he steals very stupid and petty things. Do you know that he's escaped a lot of embarrassments? Da 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 da. There was a lot more to this post, but what is important is that this highlights the fact that a lot of these conditions are prevalent in society. And while the numbers may be low, they do affect us as a whole. And then lastly, we have IED, intermittent explosive disorder. And this is a post of support groups that I found on Facebook as well for people who have to deal with others who are diagnosed with IED. This is extremely important. And in the first group here, we have 954 members. The one below that, 1.3K, 136, and the one below that. And there was a lot more groups associated with this collection here. And again, this is extremely important and relevant to us so that we can find sources and ways to cope and create strategies for people who are diagnosed with ICDs. Lastly, we have statistics. Up to 60% of people with kleptomania also fall under the diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. Studies have found that between 63 and 75% of those with kleptomania are female. 14% to 40% of those inflicted with ODD have co-occurring ADHD, and 9% to 50% experience comorbid anxiety and depression. And according to data from the fourth edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, about 10.5% of the general population is estimated to have an impulse control disorder. And while this number may seem relatively small, when you compare it to the 300, 400 billion people we have on our planet, that's an extremely high number, which means that it affects a lot more people in our society as of today than you would originally have assumed. Among adults aged 18 to 44, impulse control disorders, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder appear relatively early, around age 11, and are more prevalent among adults aged 18 to 29 than adults aged 30 to 44. And right here is a little graph for you to kind of compare mood disorders to anxiety disorders to impulse control disorders among the different age groups. And as you can see, like this statistic is indicated, impulse control disorders are more prevalent in the ages of 18 to 29 than they are for mood disorders. So now we'll discuss the relevance of these conditions. Therefore, in summation, it is important we are made aware of these impulse control conditions because although they're not extremely common, they do affect us on a regular basis. They affect our children, our loved ones, and in many ways. Thus, in understanding the ways in which these disorders can affect our society as a whole, we are then granted with the ability to identify the signs of them, which we can then utilize to address and find solutions for in order to alleviate the effects associated with said conditions. Additionally, due to the negative impact these disorders have on people, specifically struggling to maintain interpersonal relationships, legal issues, suicidal thoughts, leads people with ICDs to be more likely to struggle with having a happy, healthy life, which is extremely significant when we are considering the fact that these people have others around them who are going to be interacting with them as well. If they're struggling so strongly with legal issues, suicidal thoughts, and interpersonal relationships, this is something that we need to be aware of, and it's something that we need to find ways to take action for. Therefore, understanding these impactful attributes can encourage us to find solutions or ways to cope with ICDs sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching my presentation today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and till next time.